Welcome back to KMX Behind the Curtain. This is episode number 6. In today's episode, we're going to be speaking to Tyson Taylor, all-star wrestler from Liverpool. Then I'm going to talk to him how he's worked under Brian Dixon, Dean Allmark, and worked on the notorious wrestling camps. We're going to talk about how his start in wrestling only lasted 5 minutes. And we're also going to talk about how he actually wrestled on my Stag do. So let's get behind the curtain with Tyson Taylor. For those of you who don't know your real name, is Tyson Taylor in the wrestling world.
Yep.
Yeah, and you're here on KMX Behind the Curtain, and this is only your second interview online, I believe.
It's actually my third interview. I did another one midweek, Broken But Glorious podcast. So it is, and I've got a couple more coming up. So it was one of those things where I'd never done a podcast, and now I've just like got a string of podcasts going. But it's great. That's what I want.
So there's anyone out there that wants an interview with you, just drop you a line at your social media handle.
Definitely, I'm happy. Yeah, I'll talk about wrestling to anyone.
Amazing. Well, we'll get started. I'm sure you've covered it in other podcasts, but we'll cover it for the people that are watching today. So looking at the wrestling world, how did you get into it?
So basically, and it was one of those things where you've got, you get people who are on interviews and they're like, oh, the first day, like, I found wrestling and that was when I was hooked. Like, I can't really remember. I was that young. I'm even going to say it was probably like 3 or 4, maybe younger. I've just always watched it. There was never a time where I've gone, right, that was the time when I started. What I flicked over and you mesmerised. I've just always watched it. And like it was that long ago. It was when the Hulk Hogan had that cartoon series. He's like his cronies, and then like Roddy Piper had his cronies, and I can't really remember what happened, but I just remember watching the cartoon. So that was like the earliest I can remember of watching wrestling, but I can't really remember the first time I actually found it. So going along, just all through primary school, all through high school, college, everything, and me and my mates, we were just we kind of just driving, and there's a little sort of, it was like a sports centre. It's closed down now. It was absolutely wreck of a place. I mean, now it's just derelict now. I'm surprised it's still standing, but we were driving past once and we saw this big canvas sign, and it said wrestling here. But on like the canvas, it had like a guy like giving like another guy German, but they were in like amateur singlets. So we were thinking like, oh, it's probably like amateur wrestling. So we said, oh, we'll go. So a couple of weeks, every week, I was on my mate like, oh, we go. And he said, no, can't make it this week. So in the end, he said, Joe, what? I'm just going to go by myself. So rang up Tish, Letitia, who's Brian's daughter, and she was running it. And she said, yeah, come down. I said, oh, I only want to come down to have a little look. She said, yeah, all right, come down. So we went down, and in the bath, I mean, I'm talking, this building's old. Like, you used to have like birthday parties there when I was in primary school and everything. Like, and it was that run down that it was in the papers that there was rats in the pool. They do like, they had like a proper pool there, and they did like competitions. They found rats in it. So I'm painting a picture of how horrendous this building was. So walk down this like little corridor, and I can hear like banging, like big banging. I was like, what's that? And then I come in and there's a ring there. It's like a proper massive ring, and I was like, it's actually pro wrestling. Like, it's not amateur. So by that point, I was absolutely made up.
Yeah.
So I was sitting down, remember, and just like, and I was that like anxious to get in that I had to leave early because I was like kicking myself, like, why didn't I just start today? I was dying to get in there, so we just left. And then the next day, I got everything set up in it, and then that's how it started. Then, and Dean and Robbie Dynamite were there at that point. So,
and what was it like that first time you saw the ring? You're not expecting to see a wrestling ring. You walk in, it's always been on the TV or something, and you suddenly see that wrestling ring. What was that feeling like?
Oh, it was amazing. It was one of those things where, and I remember like sitting on the bench to like watch people, and they were doing stuff, and I just remember being like dead, like fiddly, because I was that anxious to get in. And I was going to stay for a while, but I could only stay for 5 minutes because I was that like anxious to get in. I thought, right, let's just leave now and we'll start again next week. And that's when I started. Then was the week after.
And how old are you at that point?
I think I was 17 at that point. I was going on 18, so I could drive. So yeah, I think just passed my test before my 18th birthday. So yeah, it's about 17, 18.
And that's a good point for promoters that are watching. You can drive. And that's a
Yeah,
big tick
exactly.
for
Yeah,
promoters. So we'll get that in straight away.
yeah, exactly. And I'll pick people up. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So 17 years old, you first see the ring. Did your
Yeah.
mate come along the second time you went? Or did he
No, he never came in the end. I just
Nice.
left him. I just left him in the dust.
Nice.
I just said, no, I'm going back now. And he never bothered in the end. So it was his loss at the end of the day.
How was that first bump?
Horrible. Because the thing is, it wasn't in the ring. So on the outside, it had like padding. It was thick padding, but it was because he must do like Muay Thai or some sort of MMA in there as well. So in the morning you do all your bumps, and I mean like you do your flip bumps, your front bumps, your flat back bumps, even to the point where you do your slams there, and you do your suplexes there, and you do your hip tosses there and stuff like that on these mats. And I just remember the first time, and it killed. Like it really did. It knocked the wind right out of me. But it was one of those things where I don't know. You just because that's what you were expecting. I wasn't expecting anything less from it. So when it hurt, it was like it was more the next day that I was in more pain than there doing it. But yeah, it was horrible. But once you got in the ring, you appreciated how like it had that bit of give to it, rather than because you were always doing it on the outside on the mats.
So how did you find from going from that first session to then staying there long term? What was it like, the kind of transition from being the new guy to obviously being there long term?
So you get like people now who they talk when they like start training, like, oh, started training, and then 6 months later I was wrestling. Where with me, it took me 3 years to get my first match. Wow. And there was a couple of factors to it. One, because it was absolutely awful at first. Like, and I mean, like, I was absolutely god awful, which is expected. Two, the competition for a student to get on any of Brian's shows was really hard anyway. And by that point, when I walked in, there was about 5 really good trainees. So you had it was Luke Hardy, TNT, Lightning Kid, Ben Levy, and I'm trying to think of, and Graham Taylor. So they were your 5 who had been there a while. They were getting on shows and stuff like that, and they had like their own little kind of following going on from then. So where's me coming in? Absolutely god awful. There was no point, and I was really overweight at the time.
Okay.
So they weren't going to pick me in ever. So it took me a while to get to that point of getting on a show. So and it was kind of like one of those things where when I was doing it and it was getting terrible, I knew it was terrible. It wasn't like I could self-assess myself and say I'm pretty awful at this, and I dropped a couple of people on their heads and stuff like, it was just those things of when you're like young and you don't really know what you're doing. So it was a tough journey to my first match, but I think it was kind of one along those lines. Is he kind of just looked at me like, well, he's awful, but he stays and puts the ring up. He's always polite. He never causes any trouble. He just comes in and tries his best and then leaves. So by the time my first match had come out, it was obviously better. And and the funny thing is, we did like an award ceremony thing, and it was in the paper and everything. It was in like I think it was in the World Globe or the Echo or something. And like I got an award for most improved. So, and I remember getting it, and it was obviously I'd share on Facebook, and I know my mates used to take the mick out of me saying, "Oh, so you got most improved? So you were terrible at one point, were you?" Yeah. So it was kind of one of those things where it was long and it was hard, but once it clicked then, really.
Which one did you find it was hardest, the psychology or actually the moves?
I think it was both. I didn't even realize there was a psychology to it until I had started having matches. That's when because you're just doing moves, but it was stuff like I had no upper body strength or anything. So we kind of got to the point where I was like, I need to start doing something here. So that's when I just made the decision to start losing weight and hitting the gym then. Yeah. So because I was just weak and my body wasn't up to par, and I kind of just looked at myself and said, well, I mean, no wonder I'm not getting on the shows. Look at me, if I had paid money to see, like, and you always put like your marquee players on your posters, and then I walk out, they're probably looking at it going, what have I paid for? Look at this guy. So that was kind of my decision to kind of make a change and start hitting the gym then.
And did you think that, was it a kind of an all-star kind of mentality, as if you would come in, you'd help put the ring up, take it down, or was that something that you did yourself?
No, that was what was expected of you. But at the end of the day, it was sort of expected of myself. It's one of those things where that's the drill. It's drilled into you because you've got to pay your dues, and I feel as though like nowadays people aren't really paying the dues. Like I mean, I was paying my dues. I was putting rings up. I wasn't even on these shows, but it was you help with the ring, and you got to watch the show for free. So I was like, well, I'm getting to watch a show for free here. The least I can do is help out. So I'd be doing, and I mean, at this point when I first started, the people in the locker rooms, like Mason Ryan, who was he was called the SmackDown Warrior at the time. He was before he went to WWE. Drew McIntyre was there before he was going to WWE. What's his name now? Barrett. Bad News Barrett. He was there at that point. We had a lot of American guys. Gangrel was there. So these are the guys that I was, that were in the locker room, and I'd be like going to get them, go to the shops for them if they ever need to go to shops, or I'd get them, water from the bar if they all needed water, just to try and help out as much as I can. It was just the mentality of, you've got to pay your dues. And even still to this day, I'll put a ring up for anyone. Like, I'm not one of these people like, oh, I've been into this long, I don't have to do it. I'll do it anytime. I like doing it. If you build one, if you know how to build a ring, like that's I've got to use that ring to wrestle. So why wouldn't I help doing it? And there's people out there who don't even know how to put a ring up. So that's like an electrician not knowing how to use his tools. So that's how my feeling was with it all.
And you spoke about your weight loss. I know I've listened to it on Kurt Johansson's podcast with yourself earlier this week. And you talked about how you lost quite a lot of weight. Did you find that you changed your style with that weight loss, or did you adapt? How did you adapt to it all?
Well, I think I didn't really have a style at that point because by the time I had lost weight, I hadn't even had a match yet. So it was more along the lines, I could feel myself getting fitter and I could feel myself getting stronger. So the only style change I could probably is I was more confident in the moves that I was doing, rather than, like being worried and stuff like that. Because I remember one time we were doing superplexes off the top rope, and I just tried to take this guy over, and me not even understanding the safety of it all and me not having any strength, I just dropped him like from the top rope. So I kind of had the reputation of being the terrible one in the school. But as you say, there was a transition of being like the new person to like kind of being like one of the, the experienced trainees. So it was a long, hard journey, but it was probably a journey that I needed, and I'd prefer to have had them rather than me come in and, me hitting drop kick straight away and being looking dead flashy, because I just feel as though the rough patches are the ones that make you.
Yeah, no, definitely agree. So we talk about All-Star Wrestling. Obviously, that's where you train under Dean Allmark. Yeah. How long have you been training there for?
I've been training there probably like 14 years. So, and I mean, I go to the training still now because I graduated. I probably graduated it was probably like 5 or 6 years ago now from it, but it's literally, the training school is literally less than a mile away from my house. Yeah. So there's no excuse for me not to go. And I like going in there and rolling around with all the students and helping them and helping Dean out. And if I see something that I see, on the telly or when I'm watching a match, I go, I might try that. Or I'll think of something up of what I'm, by myself or something, I'd like to go down and try it. So it keeps me pretty fresh going there.
Yeah. Do you feel you passed on some of your experience as well to obviously the new people, the new rookies that are coming through, and explain to them that, well, I wasn't ever that good, but now look at me, I've done this and...
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's one of those things where I think it's good to have like people with a little bit of experience going to these training schools, because you have Dean there, and obviously he's a master, and so everyone's looking to him, but he's so far ahead of everyone else that there's no like sort of similarities. It's just training and teacher, where I'm there, where I'm like kind of going through their journey, just like the journey I had when I was starting. So I know when people are looking down or feeling down and a little bit afraid to ask questions, I can kind of, say to them like, no, what are you going to say? Because I know you've got something on your mind, because I can see it. Because I had that look when I was training.
Yeah. So you spoke about you graduated like 5 to 6 years ago. That's actually roughly when I met you. I come up for my stag do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
How did you find stag do's? Because I know All Star do birthday parties and stag do's. How did you find them when obviously you get these stags come in or birthday party come in?
Well, to be perfectly honest, you're the only stag do we've ever done.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
One and only. That's it. We stopped after that.
Yeah, we just start. Yeah, we just topped it then. It was one of those, because with the kids, like, it can be quite difficult when you've got and they're all going nuts, and it's hard for them to sit down, and our match with them was a lot different. I mean, we didn't do all the stuff like we did on the outside and stuff like that. That was kind of we'd just gone a little bit kind of,
got carried away.
Yeah. So it was one of them. So, and I felt like on that one, the shackles are off with that match. We're like, oh, we can just go in there and just do whatever we want. And with a kids match, you've got like kind of a set thing, and you've got to do these things, and you got to watch your mouth, and you can't do this. So it was definitely, we still talk about it now. It was probably our favourite party, definitely.
No, to be fair, it's great. Like before we started recording, I was saying to you like how I didn't know it was happening. They literally dragged it along, and then they got me changed in the car park into this gas mode sort of t-shirt after Brie Bella. Brought us in, and I was like, "What is going on?" But everyone, like some of the guys in there were wrestling fans, some of them weren't. But I think the guy, what you put when you came out in the ring, I think one of the guys was on a chair. You ended up drop kicking him off a chair. We just went for it. We hadn't even been drinking at that point, and it was just we're in. So it was good.
We were kind of feeding off your energy as well, and it was even, and the stuff on the outside, we hadn't even spoke about that. We had just done it, and then in the end, someone just like, right, let's just, like, we don't have to do it the way we usually do it, step by step. Let's have a little bit of fun here. So we just kind of just went with it. We just listened to you, and this is like speaks to the people of like, you got to listen to the crowd.
Yeah.
If we'd have done it the way we had planned in the back, then it would have been a good match, but you wouldn't have had that like, oh shit moment that you had at times. It would have been a good match, but there was no surprises. Where once we got in there, we were like, so what? Let's just kind of throw away some of the things, and that's kind of like to people now who like, they plan all the matches. You've got to have. And I've got an awful memory as well. Like, my memory is absolutely terrible. Like, there's times where I've just forgot things. Like, I've gone in I'll be in the back, like, remembering, like, right, got to do it. And then I get out there and it's gone. So my whole thing is just like, give me 3 things and then we can work around the rest. That's all you need, because if you picked everything out, what happens if they're not feeling what you want?
Yeah.
You've got to have, gaps in it. And that's where we like, as soon as we got in there with you, we were like, right, let's throw away whatever we've just told ourselves we were going to do, and let's kind of have fun with this one.
Yeah, and the things with that as well is like, for wrestlers, it's kind of the way they know what they're doing, then they know their trade, because if you can listen to the crowd and change it, you make that match good and you make it excellent just from listening to what the crowd are doing.
Yeah, and it's kind of one of these things, like, you can set up a match in the back and you can kind of go, right, they're going to go nuts here, they're going to boo me here, and like, that's fine, like, there's no problem with it. But you can get times where they're just, the crowd ain't into what you're giving them, and if you're just going to carry on with what you're doing, there's going to be no emotion to it or nothing. And when I first started, we'd plan out everything. Like, if I was on with a trainee, we'd just plan out everything, and you can tell it. I mean, there's some online, like, there's just a monotone rumble of crowd. There's no ups and downs. It's just a monotone rumble. And even on like pins, it's just that no one's counting. pin or anything because no one's interested.
Yeah.
So you definitely need to have that. You definitely need to know how to do it on the fly. And sometimes with like, what happens if you're doing a show and the guy's running late, and you've got to right, he'll be here soon. Get changed. And then I remember there was one time we would do. I was on first with someone. And then they were like, right, the people who are on second aren't here yet. So you just keep going until I say stop. So we're like, all right, okay. So me and the guy put stuff together, but by the end of it, we had to add stuff in on the fly while we were in there. And we, we're doing stuff and going, whoa, and we're kind of looking around the curtain like, was anyone saying anything yet? No, all right, then keep going. Let's go to. And then we saw him like, right, all right, he's saying, all right, let's go. And then that was it then.
Yeah.
So you definitely, everyone's got to know that.
Did you think your experience of working on the camps has helped that? Because obviously you're doing so many matches in a day, in a week, and a different crowd as well, isn't there?
Yeah. I mean, there's matches where you've got, if you've been long enough, you know how they go, so no one needs to talk. So I remember there was one time we were doing a show, and it was on the camp show, and so there was like two matches or three matches, and then the final match was everyone who'd been in the three matches all had like, let's say it was like a massive 8-man tag at the end, but everyone's too busy going over the matches in the first hand. By the end, there was nothing was said, and I just remember sitting on the evening going, I haven't got a clue what I'm doing here, and it was like an over the top thing. So I was just going in there, and all he said is like, just as long as it's action, don't worry. So it's just basically shooting off, ducking stuff, let the baby face take over, and then that's all I was doing. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I was just following my instincts. And then eventually just one of the baby faces like, right, you're going out now. I said, cool. And just took me out, and that was it. And I remember feeling better doing it that way than doing it if I had to remember 7 spots or something like that, which it can get complicated.
Just explain to anyone that's watching who doesn't understand what the camps are. And obviously, there's a lot of American wrestlers talk about the British camps. There's a lot of people that talk about. Explain what they are, how you've been involved in it, who runs it, and kind of a layout of a kind of a weekend for a camp show.
So it's not even a weekend. It's just 6 weeks that just mold together into just one big tour, basically. So, and the funny thing is, I'm a teaching assistant as well. So I'd finish work on let's say Thursday, and I'm on the road by Saturday. So Saturday, you'd have maybe 2 shows on the Saturday. You'd have 3 shows on the Sunday, maybe. You'd have Monday off, 2 on Tuesday, 3 on Wednesday, 2 on Thursday, Friday off. 2 Saturday, 3 Sunday, Monday off. And then that was kind of the run then. And you'd just be going all over the places. And there was different runs. So 1 week you'd be on the North Wales run. So that would be all the places you go in North Wales, like Pwllheli and Rhyl and stuff like that. And then you'd have another one where you're down south in Cornwall. And so Cornwall would be sort of, down south, and then a little bit of South Wales and stuff like that. And then you had another one that was in that was right the way down as well, down south as well. I can't remember what that was called. So and then you had one in Scotland as well. And you just got, right, this week you're going to be on the North Wales run, right? Next week you're going to be on the Cornwall run, right? And then that was it then. Or you're going to be up in Scotland. So that was it. And you didn't really, and you didn't know where you were. You'd be sitting, you'd be literally lying in bed at 9 o'clock at night, and you're like, I need to be somewhere tomorrow morning, don't even know. And then eventually you get a call from, it'd be Brian Dixon. He'd say, oh, meet here, or because they had the digs where all the rest of stayed, meet at the digs. And go from there, Tony Spitfire's driving, or someone's going to pick you up, or can you pick up this guy and stuff like that. And then it's just relentless for 6 weeks, but it's the most fun you'll ever had. And I'd walk back into work, all the teachers and everyone else had 6 weeks off, and they're all like, oh, that was a great time. And I'm literally crawling through the door because my body's battered.
Yeah.
And I haven't had a one break, and I'm sleep deprived, and my arms falling off. So but it's the most fun. I was gutted when it didn't happen this or last year.
Yeah.
I was absolutely devastated because, and they're the times to learn. You'll learn so much. I mean, I remember the first 6 weeks I did. I come out a completely different wrestler from it.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. And the best thing is like you're doing just the same match or whatever you're doing, just to make things easier. You're just going to be on with the same person every week or every day that week. So you're just going to do the same match. Let's say maybe you're going to do a town show, you might do another different, but you've got like, let's say sometimes you're doing 12 shows a week. So now you're doing 12 shows of the same match with the same guy for that week. So by the end of it, you've polished it right off.
Yeah.
You know all the best cues, when the crowd are going to react to this point, when it's time to come up at this point, when to sell to the crowd and stuff like that. And it's probably the best way to learn. If you can do a match over and over again and start kind of like sprinkling little bits of yourself in it rather than you remembering everything, you learn then from it rather than you do. People seem to think like the best way to learn how to wrestle is you do one match and then you do a completely different match the next day, and that's going to help you through it. It's not. I think if you can do the same match over and over again and get that down and understand the positioning and the where you're going to add stuff in and when the crowd's going to say this, that helps better because you're not trying to remember what's next because you already know what's next. You've done it 10 times.
And did you find that with different tours, like if you were in Scotland, did you think the crowd reacted differently if you were down south?
No, it was just because they were just haven crowds. So these are people where they probably weren't even fans of wrestling. It's just, it's included in the price.
Yeah.
And the thing is if it was sunny outside, you were like, oh, I mean, even sunny, like sometimes sunny, even when it's sunny, it's still rammed. But let's say you've got every seat's going to be filled if it's sunny outside. And then if it's raining, everywhere's going to be filled, the bar's going to be filled, and people are going to be standing. There was one time, not last year, the year before, I can't remember where we were, and it was raining outside, and we had over 1,000 people. I was speaking to security guard. He said, "There's over 1,000 people in here," and it was rocking. They loved it, and they're like they're the things that I love about the camps.
And you mentioned Brian Dixon. He's been around wrestling now for, I think, 50 years or something.
Yeah, well over 50 years, yeah. Because that's just his promotion.
Yeah. How's it kind of working? How's it working for someone like him, who obviously has been in the wrestling world for so long?
It's, do you know what? He's pretty easy, and he's a really nice guy. I remember when I first started, people were talking about Brian Dixon as one of the Sopranos, like the head of the Sopranos, and oh, Brian wouldn't like that, and oh, Brian's going to be. And then I met him, and I was like, it's all right, doesn't seem bad at all. And I mean, there's a couple of times he's had to yell at me because I've done something wrong, but that's just that's just life. I don't hold it against him or anything. I really get on with Brian, and stuff about what he says. You just got to do it. It's his promotion, and I've never been given a task to do where I've gone, oh, I'm not doing that, or oh, why do I have to do that? Like it's his promotion, and he gives you whatever. He's not picking. He's not saying, right, I want this in the match, I want this in the match. He's not writing a script for you. He's just going, you're on with him. He's gonna, he's over, and that's it. And then he leaves you then.